It was a sad day indeed, a very sad Friday for me. Within a few minutes, I would see if my life had turned into a mess out of my control. The only thing to do for the time being was to wait and see if the expected trouble would really happen. However, I wasn't any poor wimp who would mourn and feel sorry for myself. No, I had never forgotten what my old sergeant once, a long time ago, taught me. That action is the best defense. My only choice was to fight for at least saving my honor, even if many other things went to hell. To my advantage, I received some information yesterday that gave me time enough to be well prepared for the events to come. That was the reason I was sitting in a friend's black Peugeot 307 parked in a discreet corner of the motel parking lot. I was told my wife would be here after lunch, and now it was nervously exciting to see if her red Toyota Yaris would arrive. She came and was followed a few seconds later by her real man in his extender BMW that he parked beside my wife's car. He said a few words to her and walked to the registration office. I left my car and walked to my wife's Toyota, opened the unlocked door on the passenger side, got in, and sat down in the seat. My totally surprised wife screamed, "You Billy!" "What in the hell are you doing here?" I gave her a brown envelope and said, "Not much, only giving divorce papers to my cheating soon-to-be ex-wife. Have a great time being intimate with your noble real man and feel free to stay here forever." She began screaming, "No, no, no, you are totally wrong. It is not what you think. Let me explain why I'm here, and I can promise you, it is not for any cheating. I demand a divorce, and don't give a darn if you are being intimate with that worm that just ran away to get the room key to your love nest. Feel free to be his mistress, and as I said, I don't give a darn." It was obvious that my once-upon-a-time loving wife had expected this afternoon to be a much more romantic event with her obviously horny, noble lover, because she began to cry loudly. Now her so-called real man was coming back waving the room key, and when he saw Rebecca crying and still sitting in her car, he opened the door on her side and asked, "Who the hell is he? And what has he done to you?" While he was saying that, I got out of the car, took up a small plastic bottle from my pocket, and while rushing over to him, I heard her sob. "He is my husband, and he is going to get both of us divorced for doing this." The lover shouted, "I'll beat that stupid idea out of the damn jerk." When the lover turned against me, I aimed at his face and squeezed the bottle containing a mix of water and shampoo, and the resulting water jet against his face and eyes blinded him and had him screaming with anger. While he was temporarily out of action, it was time for my second weapon, a dart with 3 flukes soldered to the head. I took a quick step getting behind him, and I took a hard swing of my right hand and pushed the dart through his pants and underwear deep into his left bottom. Thanks to the barbed tip, it remained stuck and was impossible to withdraw without surgery. My actions were successful, so I left the now obviously unlucky lovers. He had shampoo in his eyes, a dart in his rear, and was swearing like an old harbor worker. My cheating wife was still sitting, loudly crying in her car seat. I rushed to my car and left the motel parking lot without any further problems. Whatever would happen later that Friday, one thing was for sure: those lovers would not be in the mood for any romantic intimacy. I'm Billy Svensson, a 37-years-old Scandinavian guy, for the time being married to 36-years-old Rebecca. Our 2 children are Emil, 9, and Estelle, 7 years old. Rebecca and I have been together for 11 years and married during 10 years of that time. We have almost everything couples in our position are dreaming about, so we ought to be very happy, but I regret to say that we are not. In my humble opinion, the main reason for our unhappiness is Rebecca's mother. Though she is not green, doesn't have a tile, and doesn't spit fire, she must still be regarded as a genuinely hostile dragon who has never avoided any chance to be a pain in the rear to me. That began the first time I met her. I was invited for dinner at Rebecca's home. It was more of a cross-examination than a pleasant dinner. After a lot of questions, the dragon said that she didn't like my name because Billy is a Y name, and she didn't like people with Y names. Upper-class families never gave their children such names, as in Billy, Kenny, Ronnie, Molly, Nellie, Cindy, etc. Thanks for that, I thought. I was surprised when both Rebecca and her obviously spineless wimp of a father remained silent while I was humiliated by the dragon. She continued by saying that Svensson is a typical farmhand name from the days when a son got his father's first name together with son as his last name. Then she went on by saying that she had expected something better for Rebecca since her other daughter, Natalie, was going to marry a fine man from a noble family. I had heard enough, stood up and said, "Isn't that guy's father a child born out of wedlock in some distant branch of that family? And what is he? An unemployed parasite on the social welfare system?" Before somebody replied, I continued, "I need some fresh air. Are you coming with me, Rebecca?" To my great surprise, Rebecca came with me, and we left what I regarded as a dragon's nest. I knew Natalie's boyfriend Alexander from my school days, and wasn't surprised that he, with his conning skills, had gotten Rebecca's weird mother to regard him as a God's gift to Natalie. That was not my business, and why should I care? Of course, I wasn't invited to Natalie and Alexander's big wedding and didn't care a bit about that either. What I cared about was Rebecca's and my relationship, and that grew better and better until it went too well, resulting in her accidental pregnancy. That got her dragon mother almost spitting fire when she rang me and shouted her opinions about the kind of lowlife I really was in hers and other decent people's opinions, and that any kind of wedding at her expense would be out of the question. The Los Cristianos Scandinavian Church on the Spanish Canary Island, Tenerife, is a very popular place for small-scale weddings, so Rebecca and I went there with our best friend and got married. Both Rebecca and I found fine jobs in a town 210 kilometers away from our hometown, so I had minimal contact with her mother, who spent all her efforts and a lot of money on Natalie and Alexander. The next years were good for Rebecca and me and our 2 children. We made fair money, bought a nice house, and made many friends in our new hometown. Our intimate life was still on a fair level. Thanks to the distance, I had minimal interactions with Rebecca's family because her parents never visited us, and when back in our hometown, I saw my family and Rebecca went to hers. At last, even Alexander had enough of the dragon we shared as mother-in-law. To everybody's surprise, he had done well at his job and had gladly accepted a promotion that included a transfer to a new location 280 kilometers away. After some arguing with Natalie, he had given her a simple choice: accept the distance or get a divorce. She followed him to the new job. Now the dragon remembered that she had a daughter named Rebecca and began making daily phone calls. After a while, these somehow began to get Rebecca, without any real reason, acting chillier toward me. The calls centered on more nagging about what I did, had not done, or ought to do, and even more nonsense about how well everything had gone for Natalie and Alexander. Our relationship didn't get better when I told Rebecca that the main reason for Alexander moving away was to get a far distance from the hostile dragon, who was his mother-in-law. One accident never comes alone, and Rebecca's feelings for me got even chillier when a new guy, also from some side branch of a noble family, began at her job. Rather soon, Rebecca began describing him as some kind of a Superman, or at least a real man. He was married to a nurse, but his wife was in Tanzania, Africa, volunteering as a nurse at some medical aid center and still had about 3 months left on her tour. The real man and his wife intended to buy a house when she was back, but in the meantime he was living in our town renting a room at his wife's married sister's house. Rebecca got me really fed up when she compared my doings, my vocabulary, and even my clothes with that real man at her job. There's no need to say who the winner ended up being in those comparisons. Though Rebecca and I still had intimacy, my attempts were often met with comments such as, "Now again?" and "Don't you ever get enough?" If it hadn't been for our children and for Rebecca's many good sides, I would have dumped her a long time ago. But she was obviously faithful, a good mother, keen with cooking, kept herself in nice shape, and we worked well together keeping the house clean and a nice garden. If she had not started her nagging and all her other sour comments to me, she would still have been my dream wife. Of course, I wasn't a wimp who took all her nonsense without telling her my opinion, too. That increased our problems, just like one evening after our children were sleeping. Rebecca said, "I really wish you could be more like my coworker. If you are in love with that conning weakling, why don't you file for divorce and be free to be his mistress? But as long as we are married, I will never accept any cheating. Be intimate with that jerk behind my back and be sure that I will teach him that though you may act as a cheap mistress, your services will have a high price tag." Rebecca began screaming hysterically. "You simple jerk! What in the hell did you just say about me? How dare you call me a mistress? Be sure that you will pay for that." "Isn't it better that your customers have to pay?" I shouted back. Before she could make a nasty reply, two scared and crying children came to us, and I began doing my best to calm them down. 2 very chilly weeks followed after her outburst. The first weekend, she and our children went to see her parents, and then the next weekend when Natalie and Alexander came to see us. Rebecca played the good wife and was nice to me until our guests left on Sunday morning. When we waved goodbye to them, she said, "Don't be stupid enough to expect any favors from me." The next Thursday, the trouble hit the fan when one of Rebecca's female co-workers called me at my job and after a short introduction went straight to the problem. She said, "We have a new, very charming guy here at work, and there are 3 female co-workers who have been competing to seduce him, your wife, me, and one more single girl. Although we begged your wife to skip this, since she's already married to a good man, she refused to listen to us. And now she is proud as hell and bragging about being the winner of our competition and going to the motel with him tomorrow after lunch." I thanked her and persuaded her to keep the call a secret so I could do something about our problem. Back home after the job, I watched Rebecca and got the feeling that she was slightly jollier than usual. After the phone call, I started thinking about what the old sergeant said during my Army service. He had been a great admirer of the Apache warriors in the old Arizona Territory and their tactics of surprise, hit, and then disappear. I had no experience with street fighting, so my only chance to win was to do just as those old warriors had done. Rebecca had bragged to me about the real man's black belt in some Japanese fighting sport, so the surprise element was very important. Pepper spray would have been great, but that is forbidden and not available in this country, so I had to find a simple alternative. A small plastic bottle with hair shampoo and water would be my weapon, and it worked well after a painful testing in my own eyes. The sergeant told us a lot about how surprisingly effective the silent arrows, with barbed heads from a well-hidden ambush, had been at creating fear among soldiers during the frontier wars in Arizona. Of course, I could not use a bow and arrows against Rebecca's lover, but the idea got me to my small workshop in the basement. I took the closest thing that was available, a dart. By soldering 3 1-centimeter-long pieces of sewing needles in small angles around the tip of the dart, I made a barbed tip. Hopefully, it would be difficult to remove from some soft body parts without surgery. There was no chance or interest in testing that weapon on myself. After some thinking, I had a simple plan without any need to buy complicated equipment for my action. Divorce papers given to Rebecca and her lover blinded for a few seconds would give me time to push the barbed dart into his bottom. I doubted that he would remain interested in intimacy with my unfaithful wife, at least not while he had that dart in his rear. The next morning, Rebecca dressed in a rather beautiful dress, but I pretended not to see anything strange with that and avoided all comments. Both of us acted as usual for a Friday morning. At my job, I exchanged cars for the day with my fellow worker and good friend Eric. We did that often when he needed my Volvo V70 instead of his own smaller Peugeot 307. During the morning, I went to the courthouse for the divorce forms and filled one out at my office. After some searching, I succeeded in connecting to the main office of the aid organization in Tanzania and got the email address for Rebecca's lover's wife there. Then I took off at lunchtime and went to Rebecca's job and found that both she and Loverboy's car were still in the parking lot. Obviously, they had lunch at the nearby restaurant before going to the motel, so I bought a couple of hot dogs and went to the motel to wait for them. As you already know, the lovers came to the motel and my actions went just as planned. So my time in the army hadn't been totally wasted, and I felt grateful to the old sergeant there. At 3:30, my home phone rang, and the same female voice that told me yesterday about Rebecca going to the motel asked me, "Did you go to the motel today and did you see what you expected to see?" "Thanks for calling. Yes, I went there, but your coworkers weren't happy to see me. I tried to cheer up my wife with some divorce papers, but that gift didn't make her happier. The man threatened to hit me, so I had to defend myself and he got some damage to his bottom. I presume my wife must have taken him to the hospital. It was not much of a romantic date, at least not in my opinion," I told her. "Is that really true?" "Oh, yes, it is. I have no reason lie to you. My wife isn't home yet, but feel free to call her cell phone and ask her. Of course, I can't guarantee that she will tell you the whole truth," I said. Then she, whoever she was, thanked me and asked for Rebecca's cell phone number, which I gave her. I knew they'd have a nice chat, and that's exactly what I wanted. After our conversation, I immediately got to work on my revenge plan. I had already sent an email to the real man's wife in Africa, giving her all the details of what had happened. But I decided to take it a step further. First, I called my lawyer and had him draw up a post-nuptial agreement. This document stated that in case of divorce, Rebecca would receive substantially less than half of our assets due to her infidelity. I knew she would never sign it, but it wasn't meant to be signed. It was meant to scare her. Then I called a private investigator I knew from my old army days. For a reasonable fee, he agreed to gather some information about Rebecca's lover, including his financial situation, his work history, and any skeletons in his closet. Rebecca finally came home around 4 o'clock, and it was obvious she wasn't happy. She glared at me and said, "We have to talk and do it now at once." "No problem for me. You and your lover boy got what you wanted, and you had to have been totally insane if you expected me to be a poor wimp taking the humiliation you and your so-called real man intended to give me." "No way, Rebecca. I'll never take such nonsense without fighting for my pride," I replied. "Though he had not done you any harm, you hurt him so badly that I had to take him to the emergency room at the hospital. Be sure you will have to pay for that." I told her, "Actually, we are 4 adults and 2 children sharing the bill for what you and that creep did. You can't be serious if you think that the poor nurse in Africa is happy after she received my email with the information about you and her husband. Now she knows what a shameless, cheating creep she married and trusted." She shouted, "Did you really do such a nasty thing to his innocent wife?" Even threatening me with divorce was a very nasty thing to do. "I haven't threatened you with anything. Just sign the divorce papers and you'll get fair terms to be a free woman in 6 months. Refusing to sign and going to a lawyer will cost you a lot, and you will still end up with the same terms in the end," I told her. Now she understood that I was serious and began sobbing. "Oh my God, are you really serious? Please listen to me for heaven's sake. I haven't done anything wrong." "Yes, you have. By joining your imbecilic mother's vendetta against me without any real reason, only because I don't have an upper-class name, you let her persuade you to be a nagging nuisance to me. You are in love with a co-worker that you regard as my superior in all matters, based on what you have always told me. Then I found out that you have been competing with 2 single co-workers to get a date with this so-called real man. When you won that stupid game, you left the job early today, driving to a motel to collect your prize, and that meant cheating on me by being intimate with a married man. You know my opinion about cheating, so there can't be any doubt about these consequences." She continued sobbing. "I didn't cheat on you, neither today or ever before. That's for sure, and you are the only man I love. Have you forgotten that we have 2 children? What about them? Our children are the only reason that your nagging rear wasn't kicked out a long time ago. I've heard day in and day out about all my faults according to your mother's opinion, and from your own opinion of how damn worthless I'm compared to that defenseless creep of a real man you won, dated at the motel and obviously love. I'm humiliated by your cheating attempt and fed up with all the other nonsense you are always throwing at me." Rebecca continued to plead and cry, but I wasn't having any of it. I went to the kitchen, poured myself a drink, and left her to stew in her own misery. That night, I slept in the guest room, knowing this was just the beginning of my plan. The next morning, I got up early and was making coffee when Rebecca appeared, her eyes red from crying all night. "Billy, please. We need to talk about this. I swear nothing happened at that motel. We never even got inside the room." "That's only because I happened to arrive at the right time," I replied coldly. "The intent was there, Rebecca. You were ready to throw away 10 years of marriage for that pompous jerk." "It wasn't like that," she protested. "Save it," I said, handing her an envelope. "Here's what's going to happen. I've already filed the divorce papers, but there's something else you should know." She opened the envelope with trembling hands and found printouts of emails between her and her real man, along with screenshots of text messages. Her face went pale. "How did you get these?" she whispered. "That's not important. What's important is that I have them, and copies have been sent to your workplace HR department, your mother, your sister, and all our mutual friends." This wasn't entirely true. I had the messages thanks to my PI friend, but I hadn't sent them to anyone yet. The threat was enough. "You wouldn't," she gasped. "I already have," I lied. "And there's more. Your real man isn't so real after all. My investigator found some interesting things about him that I'm sure his wife would love to know." Rebecca collapsed into a chair, her face in her hands. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you humiliated me. You compared me to him for months. You belittled me in front of our friends. You let your mother poison our marriage. And then you planned to cheat on me with that pretentious jerk. Did you really think I would just roll over and take it?" 2 days later, Rebecca's real man showed up at our door. He had a bandage visible under his pants where the dart had been surgically removed, and he looked terrible. "You son of a gun," he growled when I answered the door. "My wife is flying back from Tanzania because of your email. My career is ruined because everyone at work is gossiping about us." "That's not my problem," I said calmly. "You should have thought about the consequences before you tried to sleep with my wife." "I'll kill you for this," he threatened, stepping forward. I smiled and held up my phone. "I'm recording this conversation. Would you like to threaten me again? On record? Or would you prefer I call the police and tell them about the incident at the motel where you threatened to beat me?" He backed down immediately, his face contorted with fury and humiliation. "This isn't over," he muttered as he limped back to his car. But it was over for him. My private investigator friend had discovered that he had falsified some credentials on his resume. An anonymous tip to his company's HR department ensured that he would soon be unemployed as well as divorced. As for Rebecca, she became desperate when she realized the full extent of my revenge. Her workplace became unbearable as rumors spread. Her precious reputation among her high society friends was in tatters. And her mother, the dragon, was beside herself with rage, not at me, but at Rebecca for bringing such shame on the family. A week after the motel incident, Rebecca's boss called her into his office and suggested she take a leave of absence until the situation blew over. That night, she came home in tears, begging me to call off my campaign against her. "Please, Billy, you've made your point. I was wrong, so terribly wrong. But think of the children. They don't deserve this." She was right about the children. They were the innocent victims in all this. So I agreed to a truce, with conditions. "I'll stop the public humiliation on one condition," I told her. "You call your mother right now, on speakerphone, and tell her exactly what happened and how her constant interference in our marriage contributed to this disaster." Rebecca hesitated, then nodded. The call went exactly as I expected. The dragon breathed fire, but for once, it wasn't directed at me. Rebecca hung up in tears, having been told she was a disappointment to the family name. "Are you satisfied now?" she asked bitterly. "Almost," I replied. "Pack your things. You're moving out tonight. I'm keeping the house in primary custody of the children. You can see them on weekends, provided you're not bringing your mother or any new boyfriends around." "You can't do that," she protested. "I can and I will. My lawyer has evidence of your attempted infidelity, your emotional abuse, and your unfitness as a parent due to your priority of pursuing an affair over the stability of your children's home life. Sign the papers I've prepared, or we can let a judge decide after I present all the evidence." It was a bluff, but she didn't know that. Defeated and broken, Rebecca signed the papers my lawyer had prepared, giving me extremely favorable terms in the divorce. That night, she moved out to stay with a friend. I told the children that Mommy needed some time away, but they would see her soon. It broke my heart to see them confused and sad, but I knew in the long run, this was better than living in a house filled with resentment and betrayal. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. Rebecca had found a new job in another town, closer to her sister Natalie but far from her dragon mother, who had disowned her after the scandal. Her real man had moved back to his hometown in disgrace, and his marriage also ended. His wife had written to thank me for exposing them both. As for me, I kept the house and built a new life with my children. It wasn't easy being a single father, but it was better than living with someone who didn't respect me. The children adjusted better than I expected, especially when they saw that their mother was actually more attentive during her weekend visits than she had been when living with us full-time. One evening, as I sat on the porch watching Emile and Estelle play in the yard, my phone rang. It was Rebecca. "I just wanted to say that I'm sorry," she said quietly. "Not just for what happened at the motel, but for everything before that. For letting my mother influence me, for comparing you to him, for not appreciating what I had." "It's too late for that," I replied, not unkindly. "I know," she said, "but I thought you should know that I've realized something. You were the real man all along. It just took losing you to see it." After we hung up, I sat thinking about how quickly life can change. In just 6 months, I had gone from a disrespected husband to a confident single father. The revenge had been sweet, but the real victory was finding my self-respect again. The dragon still breathes fire occasionally, usually in the form of angry emails about how I've ruined her daughter's life. I just delete them without reading them. As the old sergeant used to say, sometimes the best defense is to move on to better territory. And that's exactly what I've done. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.